In the news tonight, His Majesty the King says the main challenge in the next phase would be to create sustainable work opportunities for Jordanians, especially the youth, to tackle poverty and empower women. Palestinians describe as unlawful Israel's decision to build new settlement homes in East Jerusalem as European nations prepare to issue a joint condemnation of the Israeli move. And Iraqis mark the one-year anniversary of U.S. troops' withdrawal from their country, still suffering a political impasse and a shaky security situation. Good evening and welcome to a new edition of the news. Here are the details. His Majesty the King says that the main challenge in the next phase would be to create sustainable work opportunities for Jordanians, especially the youth, to tackle poverty issues and to empower women. King Abdullah was speaking at a meeting with the President and members of the Economic and Social Council at their headquarters here in Amman. His Majesty said the Council, as a neutral body and a think tank, has a key role to play in feeding the government with proposals as well as objective solutions on the current social and economic challenges Jordan is facing. He said the Council can also provide support to the government in setting up and implementing political, economic and social policies that ensure the participation of the public in the decision-making process. His Majesty voiced optimism in the future despite the various challenges. King Abdullah said the Council should not only concentrate on the current phase, but also on the future, urging Council members to draw long-term plans and think of mid- and long-term solutions for poverty, unemployment and other challenges. He called on members to be in direct contact with citizens and to visit the governorates to get in touch with the reality on the ground before drawing up policies and recommendations on various political, economic and social issues.
أنا متفائل جدا ل 2013 وبالتعاون معكم أنا أعتقد الوضع راح يكون ممتاز جدا. أمامنا شغل كتير صحيح، في صعوبات 100%، لكن بشغل والتعاون والتنسيق مع الجميع 2013 راح يكون أفضل. الخطط اللي راح تطلع من هون مش راح يصير خلال سنة أو سنتين، بدنا خطة لمدة 10 سنوات، وكيف بدنا نعالج مشكلة الفقر والبطالة للمرحلة الجديدة. فالبعد بالنظر مهم جدا بهذا الاتجاه، وطبعا فرص العمل مهم جدا للمدى المتوسط والطويل، والتركيز على المحافظات. هذا الهدف الرئيسي بالنسبة لنا. المرحلة الجاي لما نشكل الحكومة البرلمانية، كيف بدكم تشتغلوا من 2013 14 و15؟ لأنه اللي بسمع منكم باستمرار التعاون بين لجان زي هيك والحكومة. طيب المرة الجاية حكومة برلمانية، وإن شاء الله الحكومة البرلمانية ضلها 4 سنوات. التعاون بالمستقبل مع اللجان إنه مش فقط مع الحكومة البرلمانية، لكن مع الكتل أو الأحزاب الأخرى، حتى بيكون في سياسة مع الحكومة البرلمانية والمعارضة البناءة.
Palestinians described the Israeli decision to build additional settlement homes in East Jerusalem as unlawful, just days after provoking international protests against a project for another 3,000 settlement homes on West Bank land. Israel yesterday approved plans to build 1,500 more homes in the ultra-Orthodox neighborhood of Ramat Shlomo. The latest project is slated to be built on a portion of West Bank land Israel annexed as part of Jerusalem in a move never recognized internationally. An Israeli Interior Ministry spokeswoman said a panel will now start discussing plans for yet another 4,500 homes in 2 other settlements, Gival Hamatos and Gilo. In response, a spokesman for Fatah said Palestinians will stand firmly against such Israeli decisions.
These Israeli decisions are unlawful, especially after we have become an observer member state in the United Nations. These Israeli decisions are not only a violation of international law, but also war crimes against the Palestinian people and land. These Israeli decisions are illegitimate. We will stand against these Israeli decisions and we will stay on our Palestinian land. These Israeli decisions will only take us to the International Criminal Court.
Meanwhile, European nations in the 15-member UN Security Council are set to jointly condemn Israel over its latest expansion plans. A European diplomatic source said France, Britain, Germany and Portugal are working on a declaration to be issued in the coming days. The source added that the 4 European countries should not just focus on the E1 settlements, but on all of them, because if each one of these sees the light of day, they could call into question the creation of a two-state solution. Once the Israeli elections pass in January, we hope there will be more reasonable decisions taken by the source said. Last week, the French foreign minister said France, Britain and the US must become more directly involved in peace negotiations. And over to the crisis in Syria, and fighting continued between the Syrian government forces and rebels closing in on Damascus as the government attacked targets on the capital's outskirts. Videos uploaded to the internet showed warplanes carrying out airstrikes over eastern Ghouta and a series of explosions near a mosque in Daraya. Beit Sahm was also shown to be coming under attack as government forces were trying to enter the area. Elsewhere, explosions occurred in Rastan, a town north of Damascus, which has slipped in and out of government control during the 21-month-old uprising. In the past 24 hours, more than 1,000 Palestinian refugees living in Syria crossed into Lebanon, according to a source on the Syrian-Lebanese border. The refugees fled after Syrian rebels took control of the Yarmouk Palestinian refugee camp in Damascus yesterday. In Cairo, international mediator for Syria Lakhdar Brahimi discussed with Arab League chief Nabil Al-Arabi the situation in Syria. A statement released by the Arab League said Brahimi and Al-Arabi talked about ongoing efforts to resolve the crisis in Syria in light of consultations and contacts made by Brahimi with various sides of the crisis. They also discussed the outcome of Brahimi's meetings with officials from Russia, the United States, as well as EU foreign ministers. Brahimi's visit to Egypt comes a day after the Egyptian president and foreign minister discussed plans for Egypt to host the headquarters of the Syrian opposition coalition. The UN Arab League envoy has so far failed to bridge the gaps between the Russia and US positions on Syria, which UN diplomats say is at the heart of the long-standing deadlock on the Security Council. Iran, meanwhile, is saying it does not believe Syrian President Bashar al-Assad and his government are about to fall. Iran's Deputy Foreign Minister Hussein Amir Abdullahian said after talks in Moscow, quote, "The Syrian army and state machine are working smoothly," end quote, telling reporters that Iran has serious doubts that Assad's government might soon be ousted. The minister dismissed suggestions that Moscow had altered its stance on Syria, despite remarks by a senior Russian diplomat last week acknowledging that Assad's opponents could win the conflict. Russia has shielded Assad's government from UN Security Council censure and sanctions and has resisted Western pressure to join efforts to push the president from power. We stay with Syria, and Russia has reportedly sent warships to the Mediterranean to prepare for a potential evacuation of its citizens from Syria. Russia's Interfax news agency quoted unnamed naval sources saying that 2 assault ships, a tanker and an escort vessel left a Baltic port for the Mediterranean Sea, where Russia has a port in Syria's coastal city of Tartus. The report comes after Russia confirmed that 2 citizens working in Syria were kidnapped yesterday, along with an Italian citizen. Activists said Moscow acted after insurgents obtained a possible springboard for a thrust into Damascus by seizing the Yarmouk Palestinian camp near the heart of the city. Fresh protests broke out in Egypt against the draft constitution that has divided the nation and now looks set to be approved in the second round of the referendum due next week. As opposition protests gathered pace in Cairo, a small group of demonstrators entered the second day of a hunger strike, vowing not to eat until President Mohamed Morsi steps down. The protesters, who are camping outside Cairo's presidential palace, say the president has lost legitimacy and should leave office. According to state media, President Mohamed Morsi obtained a 57% yes vote for the constitution in the first round of the referendum last Saturday, but reportedly less than he had hoped for. The result is likely to embolden the opposition, which says the law is too Islamist. But they are unlikely to win this Saturday's second round, to be held in districts seen as even more sympathetic towards Morsi's Muslim Brotherhood. The main opposition coalition, the National Salvation Front, meanwhile, are saying there were widespread voting violations in the first round of the referendum and urged organizers to ensure that the second round is properly supervised. The Ministry of Justice said it was appointing a group of judges to investigate allegations of voting irregularities around the country. Meanwhile, the resignation of Egypt's public prosecutor due to pressure from his opponents in the judiciary has drawn an angry response from the president's supporters in the Muslim Brotherhood. Morsi's opponents, however, protesting in Cairo, broke out into cheers when the public prosecutor Talat Ibrahim announced his resignation late yesterday. He was only appointed by Morsi last month. In a statement on its Facebook page, the Muslim Brotherhood said the enforced resignation of Talat Ibrahim was a crime. Furthermore, the Brotherhood said the Supreme Judiciary Council, which governs the country's judicial system, should refuse to accept the resignation. Iraqis marked the first anniversary of U.S. troops' withdrawal from the country, still torn apart by daily suicide bombings and a shaky security situation. More than 13,000 U.S. troops left Iraq by the end of 2011, almost 9 years after an invasion that ousted Saddam Hussein. Iraq's fragile power-sharing government is still entangled in Shiite and Sunni fighting. Ethnic Kurds face off against Iraqi Arabs over disputed oil and land, and deep turmoil in neighboring Syria. Zainab Soufa has a story.
U.S. military forces completed their withdrawal from Iraq on December 18, 2011, ending a nearly 9-year war. But 1 year after the completion of the pullout of troops from Iraq, many issues affecting the country remain. Iraq's fragile power-sharing government is still entangled in Shiite and Sunni fighting. Ethnic Kurds face off against Iraqi Arabs over disputed oil and land, and deep turmoil in next-door Syria threatens to ignite Iraq's own combustible mix. Although violence has fallen sharply since the height of the sectarian slaughter in 2006 and 2007, the government is still struggling to balance the interests of Shiite, Sunni, and Kurdish political blocs. And while Iraqi forces have held their own since the U.S. departure, insurgent groups still pose a significant threat, and attacks occur almost daily.
In terms of the security situation, there were security violations during the presence of U.S. troops, and it is still continuing, but it is less than before. The security situation is better than before. I mean, this year, in the absence of U.S. troops, there have been security violations. The death toll has increased in some months or decreased in other months. But in general, the security situation is improving at the present time.
And on the 1-year anniversary, many recalled abuses committed by U.S. troops during the most violent years of the country's conflict.
The recent deteriorating situation is resulting from occupation forces, but I want to clearly state that the situation did not improve. The corruption and waste of the public money are ongoing. There's a lack in public services, and there's a blatant violation of human rights, as bad as the human rights violation during the occupation time. Female prisoners were tortured, while other prisoners died because of torture. Raids and arrest operations are ongoing.
1 year, and Iraqis remain frustrated with the political impasse and shaky security situation, which to many didn't differ much than when the U.S. troops were in control. Zain Abu Sufa for the news at 10.
Meanwhile, Iraq's President Jalal Talabani is in critical but a stable condition in a Baghdad hospital and is being treated for hardened arteries. Talabani was hospitalized in Baghdad due to a health emergency. He has been suffering from ill health this year and received medical treatment overseas several times in the last 2 years. The 79-year-old first Kurdish president has mediated among Shiite, Sunni and Kurdish parties. Iraqis believe without Talabani, the country would lose an influential peacemaker who often eased tensions in the power-sharing government and negotiated in the growing rift over oil between Baghdad and the OPEC member country's autonomous Kurdistan region. And back here at home, Her Majesty Queen Rania attended part of a workshop to review an evaluation of the National Plan of Action for Children for the years 2004 to 2013, ahead of launching a new plan next year. The plan is part of the National Council on Family Affairs work on child welfare in Jordan, while stressing on the need to keep child welfare at the top of national development priorities. Queen Rania applauded the Council on Family Affairs efforts and campaigning on behalf of Jordanian children and their welfare. In addition to reviewing the outcomes presented in the Monitoring and Evaluation Report, attendees discussed proposed next steps to improve children's welfare in Jordan. The Council on Family Affairs, UNICEF and the Ministry of Planning and International Cooperation were the main partners in producing the plan in 2002. The report revealed that the application of the multi-stakeholder approach, as well as the involvement of the different counterparts, led to a more concentrated emphasis on core issues from the different sectors. December is the busiest month for Santa and his helpers. And as usual, Santa's office is a hive of activity at this time of year as Santa and his elves and reindeer get ready for a one-day around-the-world journey on Christmas Eve. Santa has so far received more than 200,000 letters from children and is working very hard to get their wishes come true. But this time around, he is the one sending a message from his house near the Arctic Circle. His message is addressed to world leaders to work for peace in the next year.
Yeah, the kids are waiting for us.
That's it. Another year coming to the end. This was not an easy year. Financial problems all over the world. But I was very happy to see that parents still didn't have to save too much on the children. This was a restless year too. Problems, different parts of the world. So my great wish, world peace, was not gained yet. But I still look forward with positive mind towards the world leaders to working on this one. I hope all of you will be able to spend Christmas time with your loved ones, find time to reach out, give a helping hand to the others. Take care, love, that's the main thing. I wish you all a very Merry Christmas and a very Happy New Year.
Thousands of avid Corinthians fans crowded the streets of Sao Paulo to cheer the club World Cup champions as they arrived home from Japan. Their smash and grab over Chelsea completed a remarkable turnaround after Corinthians were relegated at the end of 2007. They beat Chelsea 1-0 to win their second world title. The Brazilian team drew fans of all ages to the city's downtown district, where they drove by in a motorcade. The champions celebrated by dancing and throwing jerseys to the crowd. Fireworks exploded every few seconds and huge flags waved in the sky. Barcelona have reached agreement on new contracts with key squad members Lionel Messi, Xavi Hernandez and Carlos Puyol. Messi's contract has been extended until June 30th, 2018, while Barca captain Puyol has agreed a 3-year extension. Xavi's existing deal ran until June 2016, depending on appearances, but the midfielder's new contract will end then regardless of the numbers of time he plays. Puyol, Xavi and Messi will sign their new contracts individually in the coming weeks. And finally, a quick look at the weather forecast. Cold tonight with partly cloudy skies and light variable winds. Frost formation is expected in the late hours of the night and early morning. Tomorrow, temperatures remain above their seasonal average, but it continues to be relatively cold in most regions and moderate in the Jordan Valley, with rain showers expected in the afternoon. Winds will be southwesterly moderate. In the Gulf of Aqaba, it will be fair during the day tomorrow with southerly moderate winds and slightly choppy seas. Here now is a look at temperatures forecast for tonight and tomorrow. And to close, his reminder of the day's top stories. His Majesty the King says the main challenge in the next phase would be to create sustainable work opportunities for Jordanians, especially the youth, to tackle poverty and empower women. Palestinians describe as unlawful Israel's decision to build new settlement homes in East Jerusalem as European nations prepare to issue a joint condemnation of the Israeli move. And Iraqis mark the one-year anniversary of U.S. troops' withdrawal from their country, still suffering a political impasse and a shaky security situation. And with this, we come to the end of this edition of the news. I'm Aliyah Tuqan. Thank you for joining us and have a good night.